Hi everyone, welcome back to our podcast today. I'm your host, Akaliana Klutzberg, and I'm super excited to dive into today's discussion with a very incredible and special guest. Joining us today, her name is Milan DeConti. She's an expert on the mental health disorder schizophrenia. Now, to my understanding, everyone knows about schizophrenia. We've all heard stories, we've all seen TV shows and movies regarding schizophrenia, but I feel like a lot of individuals don't understand the symptoms, the lives that not only those patients go through, but the families. So thank you so much, Milan, for coming into the podcast today and sharing your expertise and experiences with us.
Hello, Kaliana. I am so grateful to be on your podcast today, and I'm super excited to share with your listeners and to you a little bit more about schizophrenia.
Now, today specifically, we are here to talk about schizophrenia, and Milan has a lot of insight and experience regarding this topic. To kick things off, Milan, can you tell us a little bit about what schizophrenia is, just so we all have like a more general idea and understanding?
Yes, of course, I would love to explain it. So, schizophrenia is a mental disorder. It's individuals who suffer from schizophrenia can experience symptoms that ultimately disturb the way they perceive and respond to the world around them. These symptoms can be unusual perceptions, odd thoughts, disturbed emotions, and even motor irregularities. Unfortunately, though, these people's symptoms could affect their everyday lives, and they might not be able to function at home, with friends, in school, or even at work, unfortunately. Like many other disorders, though, there are different types of schizophrenia, and each type of experiences are similar or various in different ways. Every patient may be different, and it is very important to pay attention to those specific symptoms that match your patient.
We all have a better understanding of what schizophrenia is, and we all have some more knowledge on the topic. What exactly are some of the biggest misconceptions people generally have about this disorder within the family settings and like family, or just regarding family environment, the family members in general, any misconceptions like that?
Yeah, of course. So, one of the biggest misconceptions about schizophrenia within family settings would usually be that the dysfunctional families play a role in causing and maintaining the disorder. Although there might be some truth to this statement that people perceive, it's not necessarily proven. Another major misconception that people could have is that schizophrenia people are violent and dangerous. Some people may believe that the families of these individuals are scared, usually, or may even fear them, but in fact, it is the opposite. Schizophrenic patients are more likely to be the victims of violence rather than the perpetrators.
I think it's very clear that these misconceptions are more of like a general assumptions that society like ends up making about schizophrenia without properly educating themselves on the disorder overall. To move on from the misconceptions and the assumptions that society generally has, and moving into more of the family dynamics specifically, what ways can a family member's schizophrenia change communication patterns, daily routines, or even emotional interactions within the household?
Yeah, of course. So, as you could imagine, anyone that is living with a schizophrenic, it's going to be different, or like even a small change in your day-to-day living with a normal person. So, family members that are suffering from schizophrenia may avoid like conversations with others, although altogether due to difficulty staying on topic and being able to express themselves clearly. In a lot of families, you will actually notice that the family members are often adjusting their communication styles to accommodate their loved ones' needs. As for like daily routines, a lot can and will be changing. Again, though, the family members will be adjusting their schedules to accommodate their loved ones' needs, such as medical management, attending appointments, and their therapy sessions. And you might even be able to notice like subtle changes in household roles too. A family member may need to take over specific responsibilities too, such as like cooking meals and managing finances, which a schizophrenic person would have a lot of trouble doing on their
It's
own.
very clear that these families are just as affected as their patients, how exactly does coping styles such like emotion based, I've heard of emotion based and problem based, or emotion focused and problem focused coping strategies, exactly how do those two come into play and affect the well-being of not only the individual but their families and their relatives as well?
Thank you for asking that question. That's actually a really good question that I usually like to answer to people that are a little bit confused about the two. So, both emotion focused coping and problem focused coping styles play a critical role in managing the challenges of living with a family member who has a mental health condition such as schizophrenia. So, emotion focused coping would involve managing the emotions and stress that are associated with the challenging situation. In this type of coping, addressing the problem directly is not recommended. Techniques such as like mindfulness, seeking emotional problem directly, and support from friends, and even attending therapy can improve a family member's stress, which can lead to common interactions with the family. So problem-focused coping involves addressing the issues that is causing stress and then attempting to solve it through actionable steps, like seeking professional help and even creating routines. This type of coping can provide the families with a sense of control over the situation. For example, family members can take actions by researching treatment options and attending support groups, which can reduce feelings of helplessness. So ultimately, families who can balance both coping strategies are better equipped to handle the challenges of living with a loved one suffering from
To
schizophrenia.
get more specific with treatment and support, what types of support systems or even medications are effective in helping not just the patients but their families as well?
Yeah, so I think one of the hardest circumstances that a family has to adapt to is understanding how to work and just seeing if they will be able to feel that support within like any community. So like when we talk about what really helps families adapt to schizophrenia specifically, it comes down to like a mix of support systems working together within their community. One of the biggest things is giving families the right education and tools to help them understand the disorder, what to expect, and how to respond when symptoms flare up. Another piece of is emotional support, of course. That is the most important. Different caregivers, like parents versus siblings, often carry different pressures, as you can imagine. So support that actually matches their experiences makes a huge difference. We also see that when families learn how to communicate better and stay cohesive, the whole household becomes more stable. And of course, medication plays a major role in keeping symptoms controlled, but it works best when the family is involved, informed, and supported as well. It's that combination that really helps families adapt over the long term.
And have you noticed any common emotional responses that family members may experience when they go through dealing with loved ones that suffer from schizophrenia? And if you have, how can these families, or how can you make sure that these families are aware that recognizing these emotions can possibly later improve family dynamics?
That is also another great question that I love to answer. So, families that go through so many emotions when a loved one has schizophrenia, such as stress, guilt, frustration, even fear sometimes, those feelings are completely normal. A lot of families don't even realize how emotionally heavy caregiving can actually be, especially when roles start to shift or daily routines get thrown off. The stigma also plays a huge part in how families feel and communicate. It can make people more guarded or even worried about saying the wrong thing to truly trigger the schizophrenic patient. The important thing is recognizing these emotions instead of pushing them aside. When families can acknowledge what they're feeling and talk about it, they communicate better, they support each other more effectively, and build a stronger overall dynamic. It really becomes a foundation for resilience.
And then for our last question today, I'm sure our viewers and not just myself are very curious, but do you have any stories about schizophrenia? And do you personally know any stories of families or couples that maybe affected by schizophrenia? And did you see that? Did seeing this family and having to deal with the families along with the patients, did that affect or change your understanding of this disorder at all?
Yes, of course. While I do want to stay professional, I don't want to give any personal stories out. I don't have any personal stories unless like someone actually brings their stories to me, but I can say that the experiences families describe often follow a similar journey. In the beginning, there's a lot of confusion and emotional weight. People are trying to make sense of symptoms, treatment, and how their relationships are changing. But ultimately, over time, families usually develop new ways of communicating, new routines, and a stronger sense of adaptability. Hearing these kinds of stories have deeply shaped my understanding of schizophrenia. It's not just about the person with the diagnosis, it truly impacts the entire family system. And what stands out the most is the resilience families develop within time. They learn, they adjust, they grow together. That's something that really defines the experience beyond just the medical side of this disorder.
I want to give a really, 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 really big thank you to Milan for taking the time to share not only her experience but her expertise with us today. I know that the viewers, and I definitely appreciated it, your perspective on schizophrenia in general is just very, very helpful. And then listening to what you had to say about schizophrenia within family settings was incredibly enlightening. So our viewers, I want to thank you. Thank you for tuning in to today's podcast, you guys. We hope that you found today's conversation inspiring and extremely informative and extremely educating. So thank you.
Of course, of course. I was so happy to be able to talk to you, Kaliana, about schizophrenia and just answer more of the questions that people typically have about schizophrenia because, as you can imagine, there's a lot of stigma when it comes to social media and any other platforms about schizophrenic people. And it honestly just breaks my heart to have people assume their perceptions of people just based of what they've heard like in movies or books or just uncredited sources. So thank you so much for having me. I hope to be able to talk to you about any other topics again super soon. Bye-bye.